Hey everyone, are we ready to spend more money on cybersecurity? You bet. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi everyone, happy Wednesday to you. It's Alan Schimmel here for Techstrong Gang. Welcome to our Wednesday edition. We're a little heavy on the cyber today, but it's perfect because we've got some some serious cyber folks on our gang for today. Let me introduce you to them real quick. First of all, giving us our true north, he's still up north. I think he's going to stay there a while. Our cybersecurity gang member for Techstrong, Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Doing good. We've got a new federal cabinet in place up here, and I'm actually feeling pretty saucy about the direction of the company, and we will get into that more.
I love it when you're saucy, Chris. Moving on from Chris, we'll stay up north, though, to our guitar man. He's Futurum analyst, DevOps security, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you?
Really good. I guess that makes this Saucy Security Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pick your day of the week.
Yeah.
Every day is a saucy day of security.
Saucy day. All right. Now, let me introduce you to our newest gang member making her debut here today. Her name is Jules Okafor. She's the CEO of Revolution Cyber. And Jules, welcome to Techstrong Gang. It's great to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
So, Jules, we always, no hazing and loud, but we always ask the new person to kind of give our audience a little bit of your story, a little of your journey. So if you wouldn't mind, share a little.
So I am the CEO and founder of Revolution Cyber. Our firm focuses on integrating culture and communications into cybersecurity program management. We've been doing this work for about 6 years. I'm also an attorney who has chosen not to practice, but then went into security where I practice basically every day. I live in the Columbus, Ohio area and really enjoy having really provocative conversations about cybersecurity. So I'm excited to be here today.
OHIO, right? Yeah, you bet. So very cool. Welcome and thanks for being here. And then finally, he's home in Harrison, I guess. He's our resident Yankee fan and Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike.
Hey, and there's been this wave of orange and blue all over New York City lately, and I think it has something to do with the Knicks.
The Knicks looked really good last night. I have to tell you the truth. As a long-suffering Knicks fan, I keep in mind the last time they won a championship, I think it was the year I was bar mitzvahed, which was a really, really, really long time ago. 1973 to be exact. So, hey, fingers crossed. Anyway, guys, let's jump into it. There's a recent report out by our friends at Futurum, Fernando Montenegro, Mitchell, Krista Case. Cybersecurity spending will reach $288 billion by 2029. Mike, you want to lay some groundwork here, and maybe we'll hear from Mitch to start?
Yeah, the survey suggests that represents something north of an 11% compound annual growth rate between last year and 2029, which is it sounds like a far way away, but it's only 4 years when you think about it. So my question to Mitch, though, is that enough, or is it too much, or are we just finally catching up to what we should be spending in the first place?
Well, first of all, I got to say, cha-ching, 288 billion is quite a number in anything. Cybersecurity. That's a tough question to answer, Mike, because you used to use the analogy, and I don't much anymore, but cybersecurity is kind of like insurance. How much do you need, right? Just enough so we don't get hacked, or just enough that if we do, we can respond and recover from it. I think the greater issue is when you kind of delve down into the report, and this is something, there's a whole database behind this in something called the Futurum Intelligence Platform for the cybersecurity group and the other practice areas that details the financial analysis and what the different spendings on different segments are, what goes up, what goes down, that kind of thing. I think today you're at this inflection point of we have the things we've been spending on in cyber, but we also have rising kind of application security as a concern, but even more so, bigger than that is how we're going to secure AI, and we don't know, what's the budget required to do that. So this is one of those. Upon reflection, we're going to have to keep revising and adjusting where this might go. So it could go even bigger than that. It doesn't necessarily. This is the biggest number we'll see.
Jules, the report calls out or identifies the fastest growing segments are integrated risk management, security operations, and then identity access management, cloud security, application security, and data security. Seems like it's all flavors, but does that resonate with what you're seeing among your customers?
Yeah, I believe, and sometimes I used to feel very bad about this when there are economic downturns, that the increase in cybersecurity actually occurs quite significantly because there's much more of a threat because there are more people who are, you know, feel untrustworthy and people feel like they have a lot more to keep safe. So for me, with regard to our consulting, we're seeing a rise in all those areas. So I believe the spending is necessary, but it is being spent incorrectly in terms of people are not investing necessarily in the right hygiene, the right kinds of integrations to make things work well. They're really just buying more technology. And so we're going to continue to see that number rise until we start to see that people are investing in services, investing in training people inside the organization. And also, we're starting to see people investing in doing the right thing before it's required.
Mike, another thing in this report, to Jules, to your point, is it isn't just about more tools. It isn't just about more technology. I think the shift is on to what are the outcomes of what we're spending on for our security dollars, and what's the real value? What's the real impact to the business? Where can you measure it? Sure, there's some level of blocking and tackling that we have to do. So that's one trend. The other is the move away from, the cornucopia of every security tool you can fit on the shelf to more platform type solutions, a better integration, sharing of data, because now workflows, processes cross traditional stovepipe boundaries, silos within organizations, and we've got to have kind of one single source of truth. And how do we get data that's integrated to the point even where some vendors are recognizing, hey, I don't have to put all that data in my platform. I have to have a platform that can get to the data wherever it is, because it's just not realistic. Enterprises are going to sign up for the nut they'll have to pay to put it all in one product and lock it in there.
And yeah. So if I can add to that, I think that uh, one of the places this may be seeing increases is, maybe I'm being a little bit optimistic here, is as security spend bleeds into operational spend, right? Not just buying security because, as Mitch says, I need more insurance because of a bad thing. And to Joel's point, I'm actually buying the right security tools and integrating them appropriately to my business. Maybe that means, and I think there's some truth to this, that security for security's purposes is becoming less the issue as security because I'm a business and I need to do these things, and these same tools give me an actual business and economic advantage. So please.
So I have a different view on this, right? Let me introduce myself. My name is Alan, and I'm a security holic. And this reminds me of an Alcoholic Anonymous thing, right? One drink's too many and a million's not enough. We could spend 10 times this on security and still not have good security. And that's the problem. It's not a question of just, look, we could always use more dollars. Always security budgets are always tight. But it's not about the budget. What percentage of security tools and processes and products and services are bought and never used, or used sparingly, or not used correctly? It's about fundamentally changing how we view cybersecurity as part of our business, right? Yes, it's part of development. Yes, it's part of operations. Yes, it's part of HR. Yes, it's part of risk management and finance. Yes, it's part of the boardroom. Yes, 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 right? Until we recognize that cyber isn't just something we throw dollars at. As I said, like an alcoholic, there's never enough drinks for us to be satiated.
Right. So there's a report also on Security Boulevard from Checkmarks talking about a survey of CISOs, no less, where half of them are saying that responsibility for application security is shifting into the business units. And to Chris's point, maybe we're hitting some sort of moment in time here, Alan, where the business units are taking more responsibility for security because they're being held accountable for it. And maybe those AA meetings are starting to work. What do you think?
So, Mike, yes, but I think though we want to get there, we're a long way off from getting there, is the issue, right? And so I don't want to be a doubting Thomas or some old curmudgeon security guy. We used to have one of them working with us, and then he met a beautiful woman and got happy, and he couldn't play the curmudgeon anymore. But that's the fact of the matter is, we could throw, some will say you could throw that money onto a bonfire of the vanities, and for all the good it's going to do. We need, there are fundamental infrastructure, design, whatever you want to call it, issues that prevent us from being more effective in security. And yes, making other business units responsible for that is maybe a fine beginning, as we say in Vegas, but there's more to it, I'm afraid.
If I can give you one example, maybe an example of hope or despair, in the, to my point, right, in the software bill of material world, in the supply chain world that I spend so much of my time in. Interesting conversation yesterday about this, that SBOM for security. And this happens all the time. And I think we can go through all the security technology out there that we're really familiar with. And it started because security people said security thing. And software bill of materials is here because we're security people. However, right, it's really about inventory control and efficiencies and various other things. And I've always thought that is the primary use case in the end. It's the vast minority use case now. But I really do believe we're seeing adoption in that direction. And again, so this $289 billion, I'd like to believe that it's not all literally just for security. It's not literally just insurance, but more and more of it is being put there because it's also good efficiency, effectiveness, productivity. Because that's how we get out of your AA analogy, right? Where we're not just buying more guitars, right? We're actually.
I mean, look, this is
Careful
great.
there. You'd cross the line, Chris.
Yeah, don't go to guitars with him, okay? It's sensitive. But look, this is great news for security vendors, right? So you get an analyst firm putting out news like this for security vendors, boy, they're licking their chops. You get the sales team revved up.
Here's a counter narrative to this, which is, right now we're in the early throes of revolutionizing how we create software. I'm not saying AI solves all problems. I'm just saying it's changing how we work. And organizations are, in early experimentation, adoption. Some people are doing more with more AI native, AI augmented development. But it's certainly a huge trend, and it's not sitting back and waiting to happen. Developers are sort of a natural to adopt new things and try new ideas. I think we're going to go through the same thing in many other segments of our business, especially in security. It's very data centric. It's very, very analysis centric, information processing, and applying sort of the additional knowledge and processes to it makes it very well suited to AI. I'm not saying AI is going to take every security job, but if it even has half the change to security work that AI is having in development already, that may cause us to really rethink some of the things that we're doing. And maybe there's a pony in there somewhere where we actually rethink and start over and do some things differently that might lead to different or maybe even better outcomes. That's the optimistic view.
Jules, we lost you there for a bit. I I don't know if you want to pick up what you were going to say.
I did. So my just in consulting and working within organizations and having to operationalize security theory, I find that the business itself is the biggest risk. We are not set up to do what security needs us to do, to move quickly, to be nimble, to make quick decisions. And then every time we come up with a solution, it requires this very lengthy investigation, lots of people time, and security actually works against time, right? So the more time you give something security, the more risk is involved. And so what I'm finding over and over again, it is very important if we look at the lens of security as definitely ripe for change and revolution. But I find the biggest challenge over and over again is the business isn't ready to do security the way we would like it to. And I don't know that we're as quick to adapt as we should. And so we'll keep throwing money down the drain and not getting the value back. It's why businesses are taking it over. They don't believe that we're responding in time. They don't believe that we're driving revenue, reducing cost, and we keep, like Chris said, doing security for security's sake. But what if they don't care? Are we willing to admit that to ourselves? What if they don't care? And then what?
Yeah. Well, they're also comfortable with risk, right? I mean, the security people tend to look at risk as an absolute, and business execs, it's just one more risk to them that they got to consider. And they're willing to take on more risk if the revenue and opportunity justifies that. And I don't think that they necessarily always trust the cybersecurity people to make that decision for them.
That's exactly it.
And they're often enough correct, frankly. That's why they're running the company, and that you can hire cybersecurity people is because they've made the right decisions to date to have the money to hire cybersecurity people.
Well, you're a little saucy today, aren't you, Chris?
Right? Don't get me
Well,
started.
but you know what? So this to me is screaming about what is the role of the CISO then, right? Because historically, or the CISO is supposed to be that bridge from the business team to the cyber team, from the risk management team to the cyber team. The CISO is the cyber representative at that level. And, the fact is there are some CISOs who are glorified security architects. Then there are some CISOs who really are part of that exec team. And a lot of them wind up being like CIO/CISO. We've met a few in our time, right, Mitch? We've had some folks on our shows. But look, overall, there's another sort of counter to this report, Mitch, which is, I've heard from a lot of people that said, hey, we keep increasing our budget every year. We buy every shiny new trinket you bring to us because that's supposed to be the magic bullet. And you know what? We still don't have any magic bullets. We got a lot of shiny trinkets. I can't all wear them at the same time. They clash. I'm done. I'm done buying shiny trinkets. Show me something that works. And I think there's that. Now, all of that being said, I agree with this report. Security spending will go up because it's the CYA safe thing to do. So, we got a security problem. Let me spend a little more money. Doesn't mean security's better.
I very much agree with that. I'm tired of spending more on security and not necessarily knowing if I'm getting more, maybe even less. The counter to that is the data says, and this is not just in this analysis, but in a CEO and also in a CIO analysis that we did, security is the number one growing budget item in technology. And it's been that way since you and I.
Yeah, we've heard that, but they have T-Rex arms, Mitchell. Their arms don't reach into their pockets so good.
I think they're getting closer to the table so they can reach.
I would like to point out one thing, though. The bad guys have something to do with this. They're getting smarter. They're using more sophisticated tools. And as such, the attack surface we're trying to defend is also broader. So, the game is changing. And I know we play whack-a-mole all the time, but this game now is operating in real time. I mean, you think back 4 or 5 years ago, you could spend 3 weeks looking for a threat and then you'd fix it and everybody would pat you on the back. And now we're measuring threat time in seconds. So it's a different world.
Well, someone said to me, if AI is going to put security people out of work, it's also going to put bad guy security people out of work. There's a thought for you.
Well, no, they've never been dumb. They've never been done. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back and talk about malware malaise. New report out of OpenText. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Hey guys, we're back and we're talking about a report now from OpenText, which they did an analysis of all the endpoints that they track. And I think there was like 115 million of these things that they looked at, and they found out roughly 2% of the endpoints have malware running on them. And that may not seem like a big number, but if you extrapolate that out to the number of endpoints there are out there and put in 2%, you're suddenly looking at, you know, a couple of million endpoints that are infected with malware. And interestingly enough, they also pointed out that when they clean up some of these systems, about 40% of them wind up getting reinfected. So we just wind up kind of going back and doing the same thing over and over again. Jules, I know this is your life, but is this just the best we can do, or is there another way to think about this?
Ooh, um, I believe that we can. I always believe we can do better. Actually, I have to believe that, or I can't get people to pay us to do the work we do. But I will tell you that the endpoints, the endpoint protection that is currently on the market is not designed to do it quickly. It also oftentimes, especially when we see endpoints being reinfected, it's often due to behavior in the organization from people who are using devices and systems for
You know, I'll jump in here. Um, for me, there was a moment where I realized the emperor had no clothes when it came to endpoint protection. I think it was Semantic. It was when Semantic and McAfee basically ruled the roost, and they went from being just like pure antivirus to endpoint protection suites. And I realized that the amount of resources they were taking up made pigs blush. And for the amount of protection I was getting for all those resources, it was pretty useless. And I've never been a big, then Microsoft shortly thereafter came, so Jules thing, Microsoft came out with free Defender or whatever they call it thereafter. And that whole endpoint, I think that took the air out of the endpoint balloon. All of a sudden it got affordable again and a little leaner. But I've never been a big believer that it actually works.
You know, it was interesting. The last CIO job I took over, full-time CIO, the two issues were, number one was our antivirus software, we called it then, is consuming way too much of my computer resources, slows it down. The second one is we want Macs as in addition to Windows, unrelated to this. But you're right, Defender definitely changed the game, turned it free, and it kind of just made it a default. You have this stuff installed, and if something got in the way, it got too onerous and too resource consumption, you just got rid of it and did something else. It's a bit of a commodity at this point.
But is it really effective is the question.
Well, good question. Does does the lock keep the bad person out of the house at night? Right? And unless you see them on the Ring doorbell, you don't really know.
Well, I think the way that bad guys are attacking us has changed too, right? They're not hacking in anymore. They're stealing credentials and then logging in and then dropping in malware after they logged in. And so the amount of effort to drop in the malware is almost zero or close to zero. And I think that we're still fighting maybe yesterday's battle. Chris, what do you think?
I'm just trying to find anything intelligent to say about this. So look, so my middle child, 25 years old, doesn't trust any of this technology and will like unplug the Alexa dots and so forth. And we're talking about this the other day. And I don't trust any of this stuff, right? I talk about something and suddenly I'm seeing ads for things and I wasn't logged into anything, right? And but at the same time, I don't want to be alarmist about it. I think generally speaking, as we're talking about the last segment, if you have a company and it exists and it has existed for a while, you're doing the right things by definition, right? Don't freak out. And as you identify things you want to secure, look at how you can secure them. Now, are you going to say, I don't have any malware on my networks and systems? No, good grief. I also have no proof that my competition doesn't have a long distance microphone pointed at me. And. So, I in conversations like this, look, I agree. Do it better for the love of Mike, stop doing that at the same time. We had to be pragmatic about this and realize we live in a world where, yes, 2% of your devices are infected. So move on. That's the
I
world you live
thought
in. Figure it
2%
out.
was a very low number.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not
Yes.
too bad.
But it doesn't mean it's accurate. And I'll be honest, most of the devices are designed to show you the problem, not to fix them. So I know I have a ton of malware. Well, now what do? Even I just upgraded my antivirus McAfee on my laptop, and it showed me all these problems. And then to fix them was an upgrade, right? So it's like, okay, now I've
Well,
got to buy
that's
more.
always the answer,
You
right?
hit the nail on the head. Nearly all security products are just more
Well,
information.
that's how they get to $288 billion,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Upgrade.
They're
But
not separate.
no,
So
by
here's what
design.
concerns me more than do we have enough money in the budget for security is security slow to respond to a lot of things. And I know we kind of keeping up with the bad guys is the game we play. What's happening in the software development market is vendors have gone to pre-release. They don't do betas. They do early releases. They do research releases. They do all the very incremental. Every day there's something new coming out from a development tool or an LLM or somebody about writing software with AI. If security, it will get into a mode like this if it has any chance of keeping up with the pace of software development as that starts to build up. If it doesn't, we will fall so far behind in our current, it'll take a whole new generation of companies to solve this problem. So if you're out there, if you're a security company, yes, I'm an analyst and I want to talk to you, but I truly believe that there's a strategy you have to employ to be able to be competitive as AI starts to have a bigger impact. Again, AI is not the solution for everything, but it is the disruptor.
I think my problem with the whole thing is there's not a lot of shame in spreading malware, right? People are like vaguely unconscious of it. It's kind of like spreading typhoid or cholera, and they don't understand that they are, contagious. And maybe we need to have a different philosophical approach to this that's similar to how we contain those diseases. But that's just my way of thinking about it.
Go swimming in a polluted
no,
river.
that's
Enjoy
a
yourself.
personal decision in this country now. Right? We're not going to force anyone to get vaccines here or use malware detection. So what if the worm ate my brain?
My
But-
malware
Like the keyboard
uses
now,
the term
right?
quarantine, so it must
Yeah.
be bad. I
But-
got to get rid of that.
But look, can I just say one other thing though too? I know as you want to call us journalists or public figures here at Techstrong, we all love a good survey, right? I think PR agencies, that's the first thing they tell their clients. Let's do a good survey. We'll get some good pickup in the media on it. You look at this survey, 2.39% of malware infection rate on business. I think that's almost an acceptable risk. 80%, 87% of malware designed to evade detection. Hello, Captain Obvious. Like, is this survey worth the paper it was? Well, it wasn't written, so I guess it's not worth it. But, yeah, give me some insights here that I'm gonna hang my hat on. This is cotton candy softball kind of stuff, right? And I wish we had the gumption as journalists and publishers in the media to tell the PR agencies when they're pitching this cotton candy, take it to the carnival. I don't see real insights here.
And yet we just spent 15 minutes discussing what it is about malware and endpoints that we need to fix.
Yeah, it's a good conversation starter,
That's the point of the whole thing.
but I don't think I'm sorry, go ahead, Jules.
The people who are good at this will ignore that. That's for the people who don't have any other justification for spend.
I mean, that, you know, nothing here. I'm kind of yawning, saying,
Move along.
move
It's not
along,
the
move
droid you're
along.
looking
Give me
for.
the next survey. All right. Hey, we're going to take a break here. We're going to come back and ask you to fill out a survey. No, we're not. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
And we're back with something a little bit different, but there's a thing out there called, I guess, synthetic DNA, and we're going to store data and using the same kind of mechanisms that your DNA remembers things by, and at least that's the theory and the hope. And I think the reason we're paying a little bit more attention to this is the volume of data that we're creating and, of course, trying to secure has just become massive. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And I think the way that we store data still relies too heavily on, flash that's expensive and even iron metal disks that we're still storing stuff on. And maybe it's a time for a different approach. But Alan, have we reached a point with storage where we just need some fundamental breakthrough? This may or may not be it, but something's got to change.
Well, look, here's the bottom line. Storage is expensive. And for as long as I've been in technology, it's like liquid filling the chamber that you put it in. The more storage you give me, the more storage I'm going to use, right? I remember using those big old floppy disks, then the hard little 3.5-inch disk, and then I had a 40 meg hard drive, and now I look at machines that have terabytes.
What, did you work at the FAA or something?
Yeah, exactly. Well, only Newark Airport. Yeah, but I think it's always a good thing. It's always a good thing to kind of copy nature, because nature, through trial and error and evolution, usually the best solution wins out, right? It comes up with great ways of doing it. And when you look at DNA, what really is DNA? It's 4 bases, right? Put in a double helix, tightly coiled up into the nucleus for the most part, though, and they're also in the mitochondria of a cell. The density of the information packed in, and remember, in most of our chromosomes, 60% of the DNA doesn't seem to have any obvious use. It's extra space, extra storage. But the amount of storage, because it's bits and bytes, whether it's organic or not, the amount of storage we could put in there in that small space is phenomenal. So we now have the ability to make synthetic DNA, and it doesn't have to be the 4 bases that we necessarily, look are in organic DNA and life DNA. If we could harness that double helix of, the DNA structure and the other thing is, you could take a mammoth that was frozen for 30,000 years, defrost it, and that DNA is relatively intact, right? Do that with a hard drive. Bury that in Siberia.
Another viewpoint, Alan, but I'm going to come back to the kind of DNA, the biological metaphor here. I would argue that storage is cheap because we are with AI, not to talk about AI all the time.
I'm seeing a little pattern with you with this, Mitch, with the AI.
I kind of woke up on
Who are
the
you,
AI
AI
side
boy
of the bed.
today?
I did. But, machine learning took off, a few years back because we have so much storage. We could keep enough data around to actually make those algorithms useful. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
I'll hear you
no,
out, and then I'm going to counterpoint
hear
this.
hear me out, and then you can cross-examine me. So, if we didn't have storage, if we wouldn't have what we have today in terms of AI applications, kind of things, if storage wasn't cheap, or let's say cheaper. Now, I like the biological analogy because you can look at the GPU as the Darwinian thing that came along and changed everything. As that
Well,
was
it's
that was an
Occam's
accident.
razor.
Yes, that was the accident. Happy accident that GPUs happen to be really great at these kind of algorithms for AI. Who knew until we knew, right? And that's what changed the technology kind of fabric that we work with. And maybe there'll be a breakthrough like that in storage. Maybe there won't be, but I have the feeling we'll find a way to drive costs down to meet the demand that we have.
Mitch,
We have so far. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? And how does Gartner know we're not going to solve that problem in 10 years like we have 10 years ago?
so tell the Splunk customer how cheap storage is. Tell the observability customers, the SIM customers, how cheap storage is, because they're paying a fortune. Cheap is relative. Is
That's
it
man-made.
cheaper?
Those are man-made, not the cost of
So
storage.
so per megabyte the drive is cheap, but the amount of data is expensive.
But it's all relative. It's all relative, right? You give me more storage, I'm going to use more storage. It's kind of like, look, for as long as I've been in PCs, a kick-ass best in market PC was always $5,000. Right? And that one happened from 386 to 486 to Pentium to i7, i9s to Macs and everything else. You want to buy the best PC out there today, it's going to still be that same $5,000. Now, that PC I bought today makes the one I bought in 1997 look like a dinosaur. And it is a dinosaur. But it was still $5,000. Still $5,000. It's the same thing with storage. I still spend my $5,000. Maybe I get more storage for my $5,000 today, but it's not enough because I need more storage today, or I want to use more storage today. So we need, if we're going to keep that Moore's law, call it Mitch's AI law, moving, right? Where we're going to double the amount of storage we use every whatever it is time period. We need a better paradigm, a better model for storage. DNA, copying nature itself, is a way to give us the density that we're going to need. Now, I don't know, like where do you store this DNA, for instance, and stuff like this?
But Chris, let's get counterintuitive here for a minute. So it's going to be awesome that we're able to store all kinds of data, none of which will be secure. So is this a good thing for us or what?
In short, just yes, right? There's a 11-year-old me in 1976 reading about this in Scientific American who's just jumping up and down, right? And I like this, whether it's this or holographic memory, all these things we've been talking about forever. It begs the question, what would we do with, say, 10 million times more storage than we all have together right now? If we had that tomorrow, what would we do? What do you begin to do with that? And and I will use the dreaded acronym as well. I think what we're talking about in AI and LLM and so forth is the same sort of thing. When I look at supply chain, over the last 5 years and say, what would you do if you could, in the next 47 milliseconds, look at and investigate every single point in your supply chain? You can't think about that because that's never been conceivable. I could do that in 6 to 8 months. But when I start saying I can do it right now, and this is the same sort of thing. If I had that much data, if I had that much storage, how does that fundamentally change what I'm doing in the first place?
Uh, the the answer is that you could make more mistakes. Here's the thing: is quite literally most innovation comes from a lack of, not from more of. It just so more storage allows more people to make mistakes and store things they don't really need. It doesn't allow people to be efficient and thoughtful about how they're using data. And so this feels like a gimmick to me, a bit, and maybe I will be convinced some other way, but I honestly feel like like I've got, even if I think about, let's say, my iPhone, because I've got unlimited storage, I'll take the same picture a few times to get the right selfie. That's what it feels like. It's like people just store all kinds of things to make sure it's protected. But many breaches occur because there are unnecessary bits of data stored that should have been deleted. And I think that just creates additional risk at scale. And so that's my viewpoint on it.
I got a real life story to counter that one. So I'm one of those people, guilty. I take multiple selfies because my wife never likes how this one she look, and I don't know what makes a good picture or not. They all look the same to me. But so now I decide I'm going to clean up my iPhone, and I get this plug-in cleaner up or whatever it's called, right? And it says, "Oh my God, you have 56,000 duplicate pictures. Would you like me to undo them?" I said, "Yeah, to clean it." I said, "Yes, clean it." I clean it. The other day, I'm looking for a particular picture. We were doing something. I needed a picture. And you know what? All those selfies, though they claimed they were duplicates, each one's a little different. And I lost it forever. I lost it forever. And
Right.
so
And so the next time you're going to want to keep the photos.
I
because
went and deleted that cleanup app. I'll never put that on my phone again. It messed up my contacts too. So what? I had a lot of duplicate contacts, but one had Mitchell's home number, one had Mitchell's cell phone number, one had the Bat phone number, the Batcave number. So I needed it. So I'm telling you, storage is like putting on clothes. You know what I mean? It feels good sometimes to put on comfortable clothes that have a little room inside.
Well, there's an algorithm built into our DNA, the IMNT. I might need that.
Yeah,
That's what's
there is
driving
that. There is that.
I think Alan is trying to invent continuous photography where we'll just take photos every
Well,
5
they
seconds.
have that on the iPhone, right? Like,
that's the thing.
yeah, I
Yeah, I don't
know.
know.
Your wife there, people doing
So
this.
let me. You know what? Let's take that for a second. We did a roundtable in RSA, and they're sending out gifts to the roundtable participants. The new the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. Think about it. If storage was ubiquitously cheap, why wouldn't you record everything? Why wouldn't you?
My Uber driver had a pair. What the heck are you looking at while you're driving?
There are definitely times from my 20s that I'm perfectly happy were never recorded.
Well,
ever.
thank God we grew up before there were cell phones, Mike. Exactly. But that's the world. I think that's the world we're coming to, guys. I think that's the world we're coming to.
I'm going to take my inevitability curve approach to it because I have literally been thinking about this one all my life. We will get to this point where you can, in fact, record every moment of your life. That's going to happen, period. So the only question remaining is, what do we do? And Jules, to your point, I think, I would actually agree with it, but I would think what we get less of is control. Like I remember the days I used to be able to manage my email inbox and take every individual one and file them. And part of, that driving innovation is when you realize you have so much of something, you can't do it that way anymore. So maybe that's the less.
Hey guys, I hate to do this, but I looked at my clock and we're on it. This article, by the way, on DNA storage is over up on techstrong.it. You can check it out there. Security Boulevard was the OpenText malware report, and the Futurum Group. If you go to futurumgroup.com, you can probably get the blurb on this cybersecurity reach, and you can probably sign up, Mitchell, right, for a free intelligence portal account to check it out.
Yep,
And if
there's
you
a link
don't
on
find
the
it, click on the link in the article. It'll take you right there.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, Jules, what a great first time on the gang. We can't wait to have you back on here.
I was excited. I loved it. Next time, no storms. I'll schedule that.
I hope, well, see what you could do. See what we could do. If we had more storage, we wouldn't have storms like that. We'd be better forecasting using AI, of course, Mitchell. Anyway, Mike, Chris, Mitchell, Jules, thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us here on Techstrong Gang. Just a reminder, as usual, we have another 2-3+ hours of Techstrong TV following the gang today, so stay tuned for that, or watch it on demand on our OTT channel or techstrong.tv, YouTube, wherever you like to consume video. Until next time, though, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. We're out of here.